there's chair yoga, there's Megan Levy, yeah, so. The 27th, 6th or 7th, yeah. It's that week, and then you can watch through December. When we ate lunch up here last Tuesday, it was so cold in that room back here. It was, Sandy said the food just seemed to cool off as soon as she opened the box. So she'd open the box, take a bite, and close the box.
I did. About 8:15 last night.
Oh.
But yeah, he's crawling. He's the same group against my daughter's classes at Farmhouse. Friday. You making any trips coming up?
Trying to get something scheduled 2 weeks from my second shot. Same.
My second shot on Wednesday.
Maureen, what time is yours Wednesday?
Something?
I meant like 12. Then I thought, just in case Grace was really struggling with me, she went home. She said she felt really terrible. So I said I'm probably gonna take the computer home on Wednesday night, just in case. I wake up with a bad headache, I can stay in my pajamas and.
3:30.
They were not.
I suppose I'm looking.
Oh, okay.
You're all set.
Good evening and welcome to beautiful downtown Grand Forks. This is the Jobs Development Authority meeting for Monday, April 5th, 2021. Welcome and roll call.
Weigel.
Here.
Doppler. Here. Weber.
Here.
Mock.
Here.
Kwame.
Here.
Sandy. Veen. And Mayor Buczynski. Oh, thank you. And Mayor Buczynski.
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you. Item 2, JDA action items. 2.1, change in lead lender request for Associated Potato Growers.
Good evening, Tillam and Mock, members of the JDA. Fairly standard request for you here tonight. Back in the end of 2020, you approved a FlexPace loan to Associated Potato Growers, Inc. in the amount of $22,885. The company is requesting a change in lead lender from Bremer Bank to First State Bank. All loan terms, amounts, security, etc. Remains the same. It's just that one change and then approval to execute the necessary documents. So looking for approval and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Weber?
I'll move approval.
We have a motion. Is there a
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Item 2.2, defederalization of legacy ED-ARLF.
Thank you, Ms. Mott. The JDA has been invited by the EDA to request defederalization of its EDA revolving loan fund that was established after the 97 flood. EDA is sending these invitations out to revolving loan funds that have been in existence for 7 years or longer as they attempt to shift their staff focus to all the revolving loan funds that were established under the CARES Act. So while these funds still have to be used for economic development purposes, this defederalization basically removes all the reporting and federal oversight requirements that we've had. And so we have been given the opportunity to let EDA know how we would like to use these funds. And so while we could continue to use them as a gap financing tool, and we see some value in that, particularly as our COVID revolving loan fund leaves its initial disbursement stage and enters the revolving stage, EDA did state that we could use these funds as the local match for our requested construction grant that we have submitted to EDA to use for fit-up of the Herald Building as a tech accelerator. So this was presented to the Growth Fund Committee on March 22nd. They were very supportive of using the funds in this way. And so that is the request before you tonight, is to authorize staff to submit this request to defederalize the funds to the EDA for this purpose. Your staff report kind of walks through what the balances are in our EDA RLF both today and then assuming that the Sundog Mining loan request that's later on the agenda is approved, what it would be, you know, kind of a before and after. And then the other additional information is under the recommended JDA action. There's some kind of specific verbiage, so if you should choose to support this, could include that language in your motion. That checks all the boxes that EDA needs in terms of certification with our request. So that's our request, and I'm certainly happy to answer any questions you have on the process.
If I could make a quick comment. In the midst of all that technical bureaucraties.
I'm good at that, yes.
Yes, well, it's important, and you are good at it. And being so good at it, you were able to make some really creative and productive use of some federal funds that have been problematic for over the last 2 decades. And so congratulations to you, and thanks for all that hard work, and I'll move approval.
Thank you, Mr. Weber.
We have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, second. Further comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Item 2.3, Startup Grand Forks Loan Program.
Actually, this is the C-Run loan program. We had a little copy-paste error in that initial version, and it is a very EDA-heavy agenda tonight. So this item relates to the new C-Run program, which is COVID response on net needs. This is that CARES Act funding that EDA provided that I referenced earlier. When we initially undertook this and had our first funding round, we dispersed approximately $300,000 in loan funds. Demand has really slowed down since then, so we, through the efforts of Colin Hansen and Brandon Baumbach, there was some outreach made to local businesses, prior applicants, people who had expressed interest but didn't go ahead and follow through and apply. We worked with local lenders really to get some good feedback on how we could make this program both more user-friendly and more responsive to the needs of local businesses. So your staff report kind of walks through what those recommended changes are. Everything from raising the loan cap to simplifying the actual application process. I'm going to let Colin talk about the outreach and those recommendations kind of specifically, but just as a little bit of a decoder for your staff report, the highlighted items show the changes that were made through discussion at the Growth Fund Committee. Chris Wolf, who is a banker with Alaris Financial, was very instrumental in bringing his expertise as a lender to this process, so I want to specifically reach out and thank him. And then we also, once we went through the Growth Fund Committee and got their feedback, we went back to EDA to get their response on the changes, and so those highlighted changes are shown as well. Most of theirs were strikeouts rather than additions, but the staff report then walks you through all of these changes that Colin is going to amplify, but then these would be official changes to our plan, and this would be how the revolving loan fund will operate for the next year and a half as it continues in its initial disbursement phase. So with that, Colin, would you like to take over?
Chair Mock, members of the authority. As Ms. Richards said, this is the C-Run revolving loan fund. This, as we just are moving to defederalize our existing EDRLF, this will take the place eventually, when those loan funds revolve back in, will take the place of that gap financing tool that the JDA currently has. With that, really quickly about the fund, it's meant to address COVID impact and COVID recovery for businesses in Grand Forks County. There's an unusual and compelling urgency to spending these funds, which is why there's a little bit of urgency in making these changes, and as large of changes as we're presenting tonight. These funds must be spent down on a schedule by June 30th, 2022, and they're doing regular check-ins with us to make sure that we're spending down these funds. If we don't spend them, the EDA could claw them back and give them to other communities that are spending their funds more quickly, so then again there's an incentive to spend quickly as well. We also have incoming competition from ARPA, federal and state recovery funds, so there's some urgency to get these funds out the door. We have just over $1 million worth of C-Run funding left to allocate. We interviewed about 16 businesses, and those changes are in your staff report. Kind of the feedback we received was that awareness of C-Run varies, so we're going to look at our marketing, look at more traditional forms of marketing, and make a kind of pronged approach to reaching businesses. One is for businesses that just need working capital to get through their current situation and through to recovery. Others have an opportunity to grow out of this pandemic and really invest in new revenue streams. So being able to be flexible in that sense is really what drives a lot of these changes, including adding equipment and machinery as an eligible use for the funds. We've also heard the interest rate is good from folks. Increasing the deferral amount is really critical, especially for seasonal businesses. They want to get 1 year under their belt before that debt service kicks in, especially as other debt service for other COVID programs is starting to kick in now. Increasing the loan maximum for each borrower, while we're raising that to the EDA regulatory maximum, we have a soft cap of about $200,000 that we're implementing with the ability, if there's extreme circumstances or a situation, we can consider something higher than $200,000. But most businesses we visited with, $50,000 to $200,000 was kind of the sweet spot for businesses that were interested. Of businesses that were interested, we've seen a common theme in that a lot of businesses have been able to access other COVID-related programming, so that seemed to have met the need from other businesses, but where we've really seen a need are these businesses that don't meet those federal requirements. We find that if you don't meet the requirements for one program, you likely don't meet the federal requirements for many other programs. So this is really filling a critical role for some of these small businesses that don't meet those eligibility criteria. With that, if there are any questions, I'll be happy to take them now.
Any questions? Mr. Weber?
So if approved tonight, when would these loans be, when could people begin applying for these loans?
Ideally within a day or two, so.
Great, okay,
Yep.
and how would they do that?
So they would go to www.grandforksgov.com/crun. They can also reach out to the Community Development Department here at the City of Grand Forks. We can get them started, or the North Dakota Small Business Development Center would be a good place to start as well. Greg Syrup there has been providing a lot of critical support for businesses in applying for the program, so.
And if I forgot all of that, could I just call City Hall and say, hook me up with that guy who has the COVID money?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay. Very good, I'll move approval.
Thank you. Is there a second? We have a second. Go ahead. Mr. Stone.
Just a quick question, raising the loan cap, bullet D, we have showing extraordinary circumstances to get approval for 200,000 or greater, and I'm just curious, I think that's a new verbiage from the last time, and is that just to make sure that people know that there's an abundance of caution, that it's going to come to us? I mean, I'm just curious.
Absolutely. It's really to indicate that there's a higher bar to meet in terms of not only COVID impact, the overall impact on the business, but really they need to have a strong recovery plan and show how they're going to put all of those funds to use. I don't anticipate I guess really any of those applications coming forward at the moment. I haven't received interest for anything over 200,000, but it gives us the JDA some discretion to be able to entertain that if needed.
Perfect. Thank you, that's all.
Oh, yes.
And what's left in that fund? About 300 to 350,000 is out in that first round, or what are we left with?
So if we have approval of the C-Run loan tonight, we'll have $1,060,000 left in the C-Run loan fund.
And there's really no risk for us. I mean, if the loan defaults, there's no risk other than the fact that as it revolves, we won't get a chance to use that money again with less strings.
Absolutely. And if we don't spend these funds, we lose them long-term. So we want to get these funds out so that they can revolve back into our community.
Any further comments, questions? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. 2.4, EDA revolving loan fund and Flex Place loan application, Sundog Mining LLC.
Yep. We have one more item underneath the C-Run program.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I believe it's B.
Yes. So loan application from French Taste.
Yep. So French Taste LLC, Chair Mock, members of the authority, we have a request. That is a business owned and operated by Warren Tsai, who's no stranger to the JDA. He has received 2 startup loans in the past. The first loan has recently been repaid in full. Payments on the second one come up in Q2 of this year. He's had lost revenue from for COVID impact, lost revenue with vendor and catering events, especially. He has a new dine-in location at the Grand Cities Mall, which was opening about during that time during COVID, and lost perishable inventory. approach to recovery is to use these funds to help cover payroll expenses, invest in marketing for his Grand Cities location, and also jumpstarting a website and online ordering capabilities is crucial for him, and then stabilizing cash flow as we really get into this summer of recovery. We reviewed things like collateral, debt coverage, management, personal credit, also looking at COVID impact, other assistance he was able to receive, different circumstances, and overall approach to recovery. Also within these changes that were just approved for this program is administrative approval to restructure this loan. So with that, the loans that were approved previously was a $25,000 loan, which will stay the same. 1% interest rate, which will not change. Currently a 6-month deferral with the option to increase that to 12 months with those changes. And then a 60-month amortization, 5-year amortization for the working capital portion of that loan. It's secured by a UCC lien and a personal guarantee. And with that, I'll entertain any questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
Move approval?
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any further questions? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about forgetting your second item there. Item 2.4, EDA revolving loan fund and FlexPace loan application, Sundog Mining LLC.
Sure. Chairperson Mock, members of the authority, Brandon Baumbach, Director of Business Development at the Economic Development Corporation. Excited to present a new company application in front of you here tonight, Sundog Mining, particularly as they're a part of a growing scene of high-tech startup companies in our region. They are a startup data processing center, has a unique model that competes with some of the largest data processors in the industry. So through a key relationship with Minn Kota Power, the business provides access to affordable energy and infrastructure in North Dakota to data processors located around the country and region. Instead of requiring all the power be transported or the infrastructure come to a single point, rather, which can cost tens of millions of dollars, they have developed a way to work with local utilities to find pools of stranded infrastructure or unused power, driving those costs down. To access the rates, the company plans to fit up shipping containers that can be located at strategic locations. The result is to finance, or the request is to finance the initial container and to place on a long-term site. Primary expenses include purchasing of the container, equipment, and service for a transformer and power hookup. The total project cost is $418,000. The company equity in on this is $40,000, and a FlexPay subsidy request is to buy down the interest from 6.5% to 1.5% on a note from Gate City Bank, amounting at $153,000. This request is of $10,000 from the Growth Fund to leverage $20,000 from the Bank of North Dakota to do that. In addition, the request is for an EDRLF request of $225,000 to be lent at 2.44%, which is 75% of prime, which is in line with the way we've lent that in the past. The loan to value is 223% on this. It is secured through UCC filing on equipment and personal guarantees of the owners, Aaron Hall and Zach Keenan. And additionally, the Growth Fund loan is asked to include a limitation on the principal's ability to guarantee additional debt without consent to the JDA. So just a couple of notes on those. Couple of differences with this EDRLF from the past. Although it still aligns with our use for gap financing for startup companies, the EDA product is a higher percentage in that loan to value, or a higher percentage of the overall deal than what is normal. It's due to some changes within the federal parameters of the EDA money, and they had lifted some of those program requirements due to their emergency response to COVID-19, including the leveraged capital amounts. Furthermore, the nature of the business model doesn't require as much tangible assets, similar in nature to a startup software company. So the value of the company is in the business model rather than the equipment. So although the pro forma and expected sales are promising, that loan to value is a little higher than we normally see. For these differences, traditional lenders have been unable to completely finance startups like these, and this is precisely why this type of gap financing tool, the EDRLF tool, was intended for. However, we've taken additional risk mitigating steps beyond the corporate and personal guarantees, which are sufficiently liquid to cover in case of a bad day. We worked with the city attorney and we explored the ability to limit that, their ability to further extend that personal guarantee. That's possible, and they've agreed to that as well. So in summary, brand new local startup company, very unique business model competing in that high-tech industry, secured with a key partnership with Minn Kota Power. They have a really great relationship and a rate there to offer. And the EDA has changed some of the programs and encouraged us to deploy these dollars. For these reasons, the EDC has, and as well as the Growth Fund Committee on March 22nd, recommended your consideration for the application. I just want to point out the principals of the company. Aaron and Zach are here in case there are any questions. Matt Marshall, Economic Development Administrator from Minn Kota Power, is here in support of the application. And Daryl Jorgensen with Gate City Bank would have been here, but he had an emergency come up, but he was at the Growth Fund to answer any questions. So all of us would be happy to answer any questions if you have any at this time.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Mr. Weber?
Mr. Gaustad, anything to say on this? This was slightly unusual, but I believe we have your approval, is that correct?
Correct. There is a change you mentioned about the guarantee. All it does is it limits the guarantor of the loan to go out and pursue additional lending that the guarantor may have. So for example, if I was the guarantor, it may be limited that if I can't go out and get an additional $100,000 of my own debt without approval from the JDA.
Very good. With that, I'll move approval.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Item 2.5, transfer of Corporate Center 1 and 2.
This is basically a formality because, as you probably recall, about a month ago, when you were sitting as city council, you authorized transferring this property from the city to the JDA. This was at the recommendation of the city attorney, that you should formally accept this so that there's no ambiguity as to intent. So that's all we're seeking, is that you accept that transfer from the city to the JDA of the corporate center, both buildings 1 and 2.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second? Sure. We have a second? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion to adjourn? We have a motion and several seconds. We are adjourned.
Might as well keep this moving. We'll call to order the City Board of Equalization. Let's start with roll call. Maureen?
Don't I run the Board of Equalization meetings? I don't think you're on the Board of Equalization, are you?
Pardon me?
I don't know.
Yep, I believe it's the city council body that runs the Board
Yeah,
of
the city
Equalization.
council is the Board of Equalization.
I just don't think you're on the board. I don't think you technically on the meeting.
Oh, well, perfect. Easier for me.
So we'll call the order. Board of Equalization, under item 1.1, welcome to roll call.
Weigel.
Here.
Dockler. Here. Weber.
Here.
Mock.
Here.
Kavami.
Here.
Sandy.
Here.
And Veen.
Great.
With quorum.
Under item 1.2, duties of the Board of Equalization. Mr. Costa.
Yeah, Mr. Hodak just asked me, I trust most of you have already been through this process before, but some may be new. Mr. Gvami and myself are actually I've been on the other side of a Board of Equalization meeting where I've represented the taxpayer. But your job is really to, by statute, you can either increase or decrease the true and full value of the property. That's the limited role of the Board of Equalization. Taxpayer can then take it to the County Board of Equalization and also to the State Board of Equalization. He has to show up at both locations to take it to the State Board. A couple of things with respect to true and full value. You do expect that there will be competing valuations, one from Mr. Hodak, your assessor, and the taxpayer. That's not unusual. But in the research that I've done with the North Dakota Supreme Court is they've directed that you can presume that your assessor did what they were supposed to do in coming up with true and full value. The burden really is on the taxpayer to show otherwise. And this really doesn't result in, so the focus is whether the true and full value of anybody that may show up to appeal is incorrect, or I can't imagine anybody's going to come in and ask for their value to go up. It's usually to go down. But to focus in on whether the true and full value is reasonable and just to render the taxation uniform, and I'm citing out of the statute now. There isn't, other than going to the Board of Equalization, there's no appeal process to a district court. That's usually then through the abatement process. There's a second opportunity for taxpayers after the equalization process is completed I think in August. There's an opportunity for a taxpayer to seek an abatement. And that would, for this year, it would have to be filed by November 1 of 2023. So if anybody has any questions on what your role is here today.
Any comments or questions for the city attorney? Hearing none, item 1.3, comments by the city assessor. Mr. Hodak, good evening.
Okay, good evening, and thank you. President Sandy, members of the Board of Equalization, I just have a few short comments. I'll talk about our staff, our value change, and our sales ratio study, basically. And if you have any questions at any time, just feel free to interrupt. I think it's important to introduce our staff. The assessing staff mostly falls under the radar, but the assessing department consists of myself, the city assessor, Tammy Lazur is the deputy city assessor. We have 4 senior appraisers, real estate appraisers, Sheila Schreiner, Tim Ward, Darren Winkler, and Julie Litzinger. We have an assessing specialist, Melissa Omlad, and we have a GIS analyst that we share with the IT department. 25% is ours. He does all our replats and annexations for us. So the highlights of the 2021 tax year are we sent out 1,213 notices of increase. In 2021, that compares to 868 in 2020 and 984 in 2019. A notice of increase goes out to any property owner whose value goes up by 10% or more. There are basically 2 categories that we use to classify our value changes. It's new growth and revaluation. So new growth is things like annexations, exempt property that's going exempt to taxable or taxable to exempt, new construction, and reclassification. Revaluation consists of market adjustments or reappraisal. Property, we will reappraise a different neighborhood every year. And so if your property gets reappraised in any given year, that would be revaluation of an existing property. From 2020 to 2021, our overall value change was a plus 2.45%. 1.51% of that is due to new growth, and 0.94% is due to revaluation. That's actually the biggest revaluation number we've had in 3 years. It's been very close to zero. It's just under 1% this year. In 2020, we had a 2.13% overall change. 1.53% was new growth, and 0.6% was due to revaluation. Our commercial value change, a positive 2.37%. Again, this is for all reasons now, revaluation and new growth. And our residential change by 2.51%, again for the average of 2.45%. This, preliminarily, I would estimate that the value of the mill will go up $5,709. From 2020 to 2021. It was 4,870 in 2020 and 3,373 in 2019, so that is up as well. So you can see the numbers here. This is our total true and full value change, 2.45%. Residential went up 2.51, commercial went up 2.37. I also have that broken down in taxable value, and you can see here the change is 2.45%, again, in taxable value. So the change in taxable value on both, on all taxable property is $5,708,746. In terms of the sales ratio study, our residential sales ratio, now what I'm comparing here is our 2020 sales to our 2020 values. Our median ratio on the residential property was 94.2%, and our median ratio on commercial property was 92.1%. Those are both within compliance. The state requires us to be between 90 and 100% of, on the median ratio to be in compliance with the state ratio study. I did bring a few reports here that I wanted to show you where we have our conversion complete, so we have all of our properties priced on the new system for the first time in 2021. That's a very exciting proposition for us. It's been a long time coming. We've been working on this since 2014. And I just wanted to show you that when we're analyzing our sales, we can analyze them. In this first one, you can see we have 696 sales categorized by story height. And what we watch is this median ratio, and we try and keep all of those moving towards 95%. So when you look at them by story height, you can see our median is 95.91. On these ratios, I'm comparing the 2020 sales to the 2021 values. So it's a little different than the sales ratio study, but this is what our model is telling us our 2021 values look like against our 2020 sales. Our 2020 sales are the basis for our model for the 2021 tax year. So these are arrayed by story height, and you can see they're all neatly closing in around that 95% mark. We also have them by grade. Again, everything is moving in towards 95%. You can see where you have a couple here, a couple different grades where there may be only one sale, and those ratios may be outliers, but that's the problem there.
Excuse me, Mr. Hodak?
Yes.
We can't see anything that you're looking at.
Oh, I thought you guys could see this.
Nope.
I'm sorry.
No problem. I just wanted to, if there are handouts or things we should be looking at, we can't see them.
I can send that out.
Please don't start over.
Thank you. I promise I won't. I'll send these out later, but my point is when we look at these sales by story height, by grade, by condition, by age, by neighborhood, all of the ratios are in that mid-90 range. And so when we get an appeal, our question is more, is our data correct on that particular property than it is our model correct? Our model is moving us towards our market value, and we can show that with these numbers, and I'll be happy to send these out to the council tomorrow. I wish I would have known that.
Mr. Hudak, we can see it here.
Oh.
Online.
Okay. Okay. The only other comment I have is on our conversion. Again, like I said, we started this in 2014. We started with commercial property. One change we made this year, we probably wouldn't have finished our residential conversion this year, but with COVID, we decided about a year ago it wasn't safe to go out and do physical inspections with everything that was going on. So we transitioned to doing desktop reviews, which allowed us to cover more properties in a given year, and that allowed us to finish our residential reappraisal in a shorter time frame. The numbers still look good, and we're happy with the product we've got. We're getting back to business as usual next year, and we're really looking forward to that. That's all I have for comments. I would just like to say that If we could move to the next item, unless there's any
Yeah,
questions.
thank you, Mr. Hodak. Any questions about the comments that Mr. Hodak provided? Very good. Yep. It seems like the model, just based upon what you're saying, the model's working, which is great.
It's
So we'll
working.
move on to item 1.4 to receive formal protest. Mr. Hodak.
Okay, and what we will do now is I have one written protest on a home at 2511 Pembroke Drive. I have a written protest from Carrie Rosenquist, so we will accept that protest in writing. We'll open the floor up to anyone here who would like to protest their property. We will make arrangements for them. We've already got an appointment to look at this one. We'll make arrangements with anybody who's here tonight to appeal to go out and do an inspection and review their property. So I would ask to open it up to anyone who would like to appeal.
We'll open a public hearing. Is there anyone here in the audience that's interested in addressing the council and providing a request for a revaluation? Yes, sir, please come to the podium, yeah. Provide your name and address for the record.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Christopher Lockhart, and I live at 411 Reeves Drive. And we've been there for probably over 30 years. It was my parents' home, and I bought it from them about 12 years ago. And when I bought the house, it was probably appraised for about what I paid for it, which was $275,000. And when I look online, the tax records go back until 2011, and the assessed value of my house in 2011 was $293,000. And it's gone up pretty significantly over this period of time, and if I understand correctly, when it sounds like the average residence is going up about 2.5%, the proposed increase in my property tax is 37.68%, and the proposed increase in my assessed value is $163,000 and change. So when I look at what has gone up in the last 10 years, my property value has gone about 80-some%. And I think in a year when I'm a physician at Altru, I took a 20% pay cut. And so I think that it's, you can talk about numbers and how overall things look good, but I think that it's completely unreasonable to go up 37.68% when I haven't done any work inside the house in 15 years. I haven't added to the living space. I haven't added, a garage or anything like that. If I replaced the roof that was failing, and I replaced the patio foundation that was failing. And so I'd like to appeal because I don't want to get taxed out of my house.
Thank you, Doctor. We have your name and address, and we will make arrangements to set up a time for our assessing department to go out and reevaluate.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there others in the audience interested? Please come forward to the podium. Provide your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Bev Bredemeyer, and I live at 1191 Oxbow Court. I just moved there in August of 2020, and I got a percent change of 194.47%. And I guess I didn't realize what this process would be tonight. I just kind of wanted to find out what's going on. That's a pretty steep change, $197,000.
Ma'am, is yours a newer home?
It's been there since 2005. It's a townhouse.
Interesting. Okay, again, we have your name and address, and certainly we'll reach out to you.
We'll be in touch tomorrow.
I won't be home tomorrow.
Okay.
After work.
Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else in the audience wish to discuss their properties? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. We've formally received 3 protests, Mr. Hodak, and you will reach out to them within the next day or so to discuss their properties.
Yes, we will be making contact with them as soon as we can. I would ask that you receive these formal protests, adjourn the meeting, and review to consider the appeals and reconvene as the Board of Equalization on April 19th prior to the City Council meeting.
Excellent. Is there a motion to receive? Thank you by Mr. Weber, second by Mock. Are there any other comments for the city assessors other than thank you for all you and your team, all the good work every year? It's very difficult to get through so many properties, and we're following state law the way we're supposed to, and I really appreciate everything that you're doing.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Move to adjourn by Weber, second by Mock. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Are you adjourning the council meeting?
No, we're just adjourning the Board of Equalization. Yes, sir. Thank you. Hearing no other comments, we're adjourned. And everyone hold tight. We'll get the city council meeting going momentarily.
I don't want to wall, I'll say it. So much glory. So much glory.
All right, welcome everybody. We're going to call to order the Grand Forks City Council meeting, Monday, April 5th, 2021. Roll call, please, Maureen.
Weigel.
Here.
Doppler. Here. Weber.
Here.
Mock. Here. Gabami.
Here.
Sandy.
Here.
And Veen.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. 1.2, Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, 1.3, Mayor's announcements. Mr. Hound, I'm going to have you go here. Yeah, why don't you go first? Go ahead. We'll get you up here so you can get out here for the North Valley Labor Council. Let us know what you got going on and get us informed, sir.
My name is Ralph Honda. I live at 1006 Belmont Road. I want to thank the mayor and the city council members for allowing me to address this issue that I'll bring up, which is vitally important to the greater Grand Forks and the surrounding communities. On April 16th at Our Savior Lutheran Church, we will be bringing in a semi full of food, and that's for anybody who feels they're in need. They can have one box or two boxes. You just tell us, we'll load it for you. We ran out of food when we did it on March 26th, but just be cautious. I guess if someone said, I'll take 25 boxes, and they were in a pickup, I guess I might have to question that. So, and then on April 22nd, we'll be back at Sheridan Lutheran Church, and both food drops will start at noon. When we did it on March 26th, we had to start at 11 o'clock because we were backing up traffic in the parking lot and on 17th Avenue and on 20th Street. So we had to start early. They'd done it in Fargo. They were supposed to do the first one in Fargo on February 12th, but it was 55 below that day, so we gave them our date, February 22nd. They've done it in Rochester, Duluth, and surrounding cities like that. It normally takes maybe 3 hours, maybe a little more. When we did ours on March 26th, we were done in an hour and 10 minutes. That's how we ran out of food. And some people were upset because we started early, but we didn't have no choice but to start early. And we're looking for volunteers, so ahead of time, I'll say, Mr. Mayor and city council members, I challenge you to challenge the mayor of East Side and the council members on the east side to come out there and volunteer. We'll put you to work. Maybe like some people have never worked before, I bet. Anyway, we'll put you to work, and it's a cause. Deeply that I'm a retired letter carrier, and I did a letter carrier food drive for 27 years, and that was my passion. And this is my passion. We're looking for volunteers, so again, I thank you for letting me allow to come before this. I'm a member of the Northern Valley Labor Council, which is sponsoring this. So I'll answer any questions, if anybody's got any questions.
Let's just get those dates out there. First of all, thank you for what you're doing. I mean, there's a lot of need in this community. You're seeing
Yes.
by those.
If you can get them out there for the more, the merrier. I contacted all the 5 Greater Grand Forks food banks, you know.
And so that's April 16th at noon at Our Savior Church, and then April 22nd, is that at Sharon Lutheran?
Yes.
And they both start at noon?
Yes.
All right.
Remember my challenge. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, Mr. Weber, please.
Mr. Honda? I'll echo what the mayor said. Thank you for all that you've been doing in this community for many, many years. If we want to donate food or just donate cash to this cause, what would people do?
If, would rather that you donate food, but if you donate cash, see one of us, either me or Mark, at one of our food drops, you know, then we'll donate it to the food banks, divide it up and donate it to food banks.
So you'd just like us to bring a bag of groceries to the food drive and drop it off on those dates at those locations?
Sure, that's fine. I mean, we'll be having a semi, it's a 30-pound box of food, sealed, and a gallon of milk. And when you pull up, we'll ask you what you want. You can have 1 or you can have 3. You know.
Very good.
But we'll do the loading for you.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you. Well, I don't know how to segue off that, but the next one we're talking about is Spring Cleanup Week. That's coming up in May here. Lee Ray, in her last month, it'll be her last spring cleanup to organize. She got a couple other notes for me to spread out there, so people have plenty of time. Electronics collection event is Saturday, May 1st. So if you got your old, TVs, computers, monitors, all that stuff. And then May 3rd to the 7th. And if you, at 7 a.m., if you're, it's on the same day as your garbage pickup. And if you're lucky enough to have it on Monday, I'm going to be going out there with the crews and putting in an 8-hour shift, picking up on spring cleaning. So I'm excited to get out there. My wife told me I can't take anything home though, so we'll see how that works out. And then we got extended landfill hours as well during cleanup week, so you can get out there to the dump as well. And then one last thing I just wanted to highlight, we've got, I just want to send our thoughts and prayers out to the Schonert family. They've been dealing with a traumatic injury to their son, Kaiser, who back in January had an accident on a horse and had a serious brain injury. It's been kind of quiet, but they've been going through a tough time, relocated down to Fargo to be closer to him. So they're looking at any fundraising to help out with medical expenses and the relocation. You can Venmo directly to @GrandForks-Firefighters or direct payment to Gate City Bank, and there's an account titled Caring for Kaiser. And just to highlight what kind of a family this is and how amazing Captain Schonert is, and probably not too many people know this, but and actually even tonight he's getting an award from the VFW. We had a firefighter years ago that had retired and actually needed a kidney, and Captain Schonert went out kind of quietly, didn't tell anybody, found out he was a match and ended up donating a kidney to that firefighter. So pretty amazing man, pretty amazing family. So I think you'd like to help them out when they're in need. So just wanted to spotlight that. So prayers will be with them. With that, we'll move on to 2 awards, presentations, appointments, and proclamations.
2.1, presentation, Knight Foundation, funded study on University Avenue corridor.
All right, is Ms. Bombach going to kick us off on this? All right.
Thank you.
Mayor, if you wouldn't mind hitting the lights, please.
How do I make this bigger? All right. I think that'll be fine. Okay. Thank you, Mayor Boczynski, members of the City Council, for providing some time this evening. We'll try to be quick. My name is Becca Bombach, and I am the Executive Director of the Community Foundation of Grand Forks, East Grand Forks, and Region. The Community Foundation, in partnership with Knight Foundation, is excited to present the long-awaited results of the University Avenue Corridor Study, a project which we engaged JLG Architects through an RFP process in 2019. Before turning it over to Jonathan and Mike, I'd like to provide a very brief background on the origins of this project. For the past 20 years, the Community Foundation has been in close philanthropic partnership with Knight Foundation. Knight invests in communities where the Knight brothers once owned and operated newspapers. Grand Forks is very lucky to be one of those 26 Knight communities. Through local investments at the Community Foundation, Knight seeks to build inclusive, engaged communities where people are attached to the place they live and are invested in that community's future. Over the past 3 years, we have specifically sought to strengthen connections between the University of North Dakota and downtown Grand Forks, between our students and the larger Grand Forks community. Although an important physical connection between these key locations, the University Corridor also presents opportunities for community engagement, retention of talent, and innovation of public space. Our hope is that this study will inspire future developments, encourage public activity, enhance the safety of the corridor, and celebrate the historic aspects of the surrounding neighborhoods. You have the study before you in physical form, but it's also available on our website at gofoundation.org. Thanks.
Thank you, Becca. Mayor Boczynski, members of the City Council, I'm excited to be here today. As Becca mentioned, we're going to keep it brief. You all should have a physical copy of the complete study in front of you, so you can take the time to dive into that and certainly reach out if there's any questions afterwards. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the process, and then I'll turn it over to Mike McLean, who will talk a little bit about the results of the study and some of our findings. As Becca mentioned, we kicked this off in 2019 with a pretty short timeline to wrap it up, and then last year happened, so here we are now in 2021. You'll see as you look in the document, one of the things that's outlined through our survey results is the requests from some of the community to fix some of the potholes on University Avenue. That's been fixed. So one of the bonuses of having a little extra time is that we've had some quick wins come out of the document already. As you can see on the screen, we had a steering committee that met regularly to discuss what we wanted to do with this study. We tried to pick a good representation of members from throughout the community, representing the City Council, school board, residents that lived on University Avenue, some city staff, members of the University of North Dakota. A couple things I would like to note. Number one, the results of this document do not reflect necessarily consensus of that steering committee. The steering committee was meant to bring different perspectives to the table, as we had at times very robust discussions around some of these topics. The second point I want to make is that this is a vision document. This is not intended to be a master plan. This is intended, as Becca mentioned, to inspire the community and think of maybe some bigger ideas that we could talk about as we move forward with this corridor. It was very community engagement driven. We launched a survey to start things off that we really used as a foundation for our discussions. We had a couple of public forums on different topics throughout the process. You remember the longest table event. There were questions as part of the engagement for that directly related to the corridor. And then we also had a number of focus groups with specific groups in town, the Grand Forks Public Schools, Safe Kids, Cities Area Transit, and members of Planning and Zoning. As I mentioned, we kicked things off with the survey. I'm just going to go through a little bit of some of the highlights of that survey. We received about 1,200 total responses. Not all of the questions were required, so we still got a good representation from throughout the community, we felt, from the survey. You can see the breakdown of the people that took the survey. We had a good swath of people that lived close to the corridor, but a lot of people use this street that don't live near the corridor to travel, so we felt that their voice was important in this process as well. We asked some simple foundational questions, like, is University Avenue important to the community? And over 80% of the people either strongly agreed or somewhat agreed with that. And also, is improving the University Avenue corridor worthwhile public investment? And again, we had a large percentage of the survey respondents agree with that. We asked about bicyclists and pedestrians in general senses. Is it important to make improvements for them? And again, a large number of people either strongly agreed or somewhat agreed with that. Traveling between UND and downtown, was that important? Again, a large number of people agreeing with that. And we asked about lighting, since there are a lot of people that both walk and bike along the corridor, and there were quite a few people that disagreed with the fact that there was enough lighting on University Avenue, and you will see that reflected in the document and some of our recommendations as well. We asked about University Park. All these questions also had a comment section, and that one was, it was no surprise the results on that. People feel very strongly about the importance of University Park. Well over 90% of the people felt it was important to preserve that. The comments, a lot of them alluded to that being the best park in town, and it's really a part of the fabric of this community in terms of Grand Forks' identity. Aesthetics and beauty as a part of making improvements. Again, a lot of people agreed with that being important as we developed recommendations. We listed a number of different types of improvements that could be options, and a pretty good mix of different things that people felt were important when considering new improvements, from lighting, places to sit, greenery, landscaping, to neighborhood identity. And there's a section in the study that you'll see that reflects neighborhood identity as well. And then we asked about factors to consider, listing cost, listing safety, parking, improving beauty, and ask people to rank the most important things in terms of factors, and you can see the breakdown there. I'm going to turn it over to Mike, and he'll go over some of the recommendations and themes.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Mayor Bochenski and City Council members. So throughout the engagement process, a few themes kept rising to the top of the priority list, and that's what you're going to see on the screen here right now. And that's how we organized this whole vision document, was in these recommendations. It's also, these specific themes are also found in the table of contents in the front of the document if you have trouble seeing that on the screen. I won't be going into each one of those recommendations tonight. I know we don't have time for that, but I do want to just highlight just a couple talking points about each one of those themes. The first theme was enhancing corridor safety, and so here we wanted to bring recommendations to improve lighting, intersections, streets, and sidewalk improvements. During the process, we engaged with numerous stakeholders that Jonathan mentioned, some of which were Grand Forks Public Schools, Grand Forks Safe Kids, and University of North Dakota, people that have direct contact with this corridor on a daily basis. And that was something that they really prioritized, is just pedestrian safety was a concern and something that they felt could be addressed. And so through that, our recommendations will help ensure that the corridor is a safe place to walk, bike, and drive throughout the year. The second theme was integrate all forms of transportation. And in this section, you'll find recommendations geared towards bicycle infrastructure, improving public transportation, and improvements of stops and overall ridership, and considerations for future multi-use path opportunities. Jonathan mentioned in the survey that bicycle safety was a top priority. Over 80% of respondents noted that, and so we wanted to make sure that was addressed in the study. Stakeholder engagement, we also heard a desire from City Transit that the bus stops and shelters could use improvement. So We want to factor that into how this could be incorporated into our recommendations. And then finally, in this section, we wanted to provide opportunities to look at some of these projects and how you could pilot them from a short-term standpoint to test ideas out. And then if those things were successful, look at maybe some ways to implement that in the long term. As Jonathan also mentioned, the mill and overlay, that's been done. The next time that the corridor will need to be addressed will be 7 to 10 years. So there's some things that we can look ahead towards to see, hey, is this really worth a long-term investment or not? So that section covered a lot of those items. The third theme was boost corridor activity. And these recommendations range from policy and regulation updates and changes, emphasizing community events and real estate and business opportunities. Really, this whole section was about putting the right policies in place to spur new development while preserving the qualities of the historic neighborhood. We heard at our public forums there was a lot of concern about how new development would take away from the historic charm that the corridor already has. And so we wanted to find ways that you could even just look at policy to implement development that isn't going to be out of place and that it fits in the right spots on the corridor. And so you'll find different recommendations on that. And then the final theme was celebrating the neighborhood identity. And in this section, you'll find recommendations that enhance and celebrate all the great things about the corridor. For example, the street canopy with the trees on that corridor is one of the nicest canopies you'll find in town and even in the state. And so what are some recommendations just to acknowledge that and how we can keep that on the forefront if there are developments that happen, that we preserve that. University Park was another good example. 95% of the respondents in the survey, and that was over 800 people responded to that question, 95% said preserving University Avenue Park was a top priority. And so we felt that it was important to note that not only should it be preserved as a park, but it should be highlighted and celebrated and try to find ways to program it as much as possible. And then this might be hard to see for you on the screen here, but for those that are calling in, this just shows an example of what each deck looks like or each page spread looks like in the document and how it's organized. We wanted this to be a very easy study or vision document to understand so that anyone that picks it up can go to one of these recommendations, and it's based around an action, a clear action to make this certain type of improvement, and then also having visuals like photographs or sketches where people can say, oh, okay, I see what they're talking about. So you don't have to spend the entire you don't have to spend all your time reading the entire document. You can quickly go to something you have interest in, see what the recommendation is about, and again, just make that focus all on that action. We want to really inspire the community to step in and be a champion. And then that will take you to the last slide that I'll talk about today, and that is an action plan. So that essentially took all the recommendations from these 4 themes and categorized them from what is the easiest to implement in terms of time and cost, low cost, less amount of time, to the most expensive long-term. So top left, you'll see kind of the easiest to implement, if you will, and then bottom right, you'll see the most expensive, longest term. And these will fluctuate a little bit just depending on things that might pop up. But really, if you have any takeaway on this whole document, it would be this page 36, where it calls out these specific action items, where they're at on the overall grand vision, and really encourage council members, mayor, and anyone else that has leadership in the community to, if there's a passion that you have on any of this, to reach out to us or to Becca, and we can start working together on connecting some dots. And then it also just references those specific pages where we talk a little bit more about this priority. So you can start at this page and you can dive into whatever you have passion about. So again, the ultimate goal is to make this an implementable plan, make it easy to understand, and something that we can get excited about, and not just a plan that goes and sits on a shelf somewhere. So really appreciate your time tonight, and just want to open it up if you had any questions. And again, I think we do have the handouts here for everyone too, so if we need to go into any specific items, we can certainly do that as well.
Well, thank you, Mr. McLean, Mr. Holt, Ms. Bombach. I think this is laid out so well and just a great resource to be able to look at. Any questions? Council, Mr. Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On page 65, the action plan, the first couple of years, remove center of street zoning boundaries. That title isn't automatically intuitive, but could you discuss that for a moment? It seems like something that we could do fairly easily and quickly with no cost.
Yes, exactly. So that specific recommendation deals with basically where the Millspur Railway is, all the way down to 3rd Street. Essentially at the center of University. On the north side, it's a residential zone district. On the south side, it's commercial. And so by just moving that a half block over to encapsulate the north side of University, you're encouraging development of commercial activity on that side. Now, there's a lot of existing houses there. Some are rented, some are owned. But there's also businesses that fall in line in that area that have been grandfathered in. So just recognizing that as an opportunity, if somebody comes along and says, hey, I want to buy this house and I want to turn it into an ice cream parlor or something like that, that you have the ability to do that. And having commercial activity at that particular point on University makes a lot of sense. So that's something we just acknowledge that doesn't really have a cost at all. It's just looking at things like that, what are easy opportunities here to make a difference that have little to no cost or effort, so.
Very good. The zoning from Washington to the university, is that all residential then?
For the most part, I think there's individual lots that are zoned differently. There's a Salvation Army's on that, on that corridor. There's a church or two, I think, on that corridor as well. So there's some nuanced pieces, but the overwhelming majority is residential. With most of those being rental properties now, we were kind of surprised. I can't remember the exact percentage, but majority of those properties are rental properties. And it takes up the closer you get to university, or to UND, obviously, but.
When I visit different university towns, one of the places that's fun to go to is places like the University Corridor. And one of the things that makes them attractive is the businesses along those. Ice cream shops, coffee shops, etc. So it sounds like the stretch from Washington to the university might be a little more involved. But Mr. Phelan, do you know, what would it take for us to remove the center of street zoning from the Mill Spur to North 3rd Street? Is that just a motion? 2 readings of planning and zoning, of course. Yes.
I think the important part is it's in City Council's hands, Mayor Buczynski and members of the City Council. So I think it would be a request of our planning department to bring this on behalf of on the City Council to ask for the request for the change.
So I'd like to make a motion that the council requests that of P&Z that they consider the removal of center of street zoning from the Mill Spur to North 3rd Street.
All right, and I think certainly staff can work on it as well, and we'll get it in front of them. But if you guys would want to vote on that, or you want to talk about it more, I'm assuming everyone's fairly comfortable with that. Anyone disagree? I guess you can vote no. Any other comments?
Yeah, I have one quick comment for Mr. Weber.
Mr. Veen. Mr. Veen, please.
I think the theory of it sounds good. I just wondered, do we have enough information to actually make a recommendation? And it would seem to me we would want to have planning and zoning, planning department look at it and know the full implications of it. I don't know if we have any data necessary to support it, although it sounds good. I'm just worried about unintended consequences.
Mayor Buczynski, I take it as you want it, our planning department to take it under consideration, bring it through planning and zoning, and ultimately to City Council. And so as part of that, we'll do further due diligence. So policymakers will be in a position to make a decision.
Does that work for you, Mr. Weber?
It does. Thank you, Mr. Weber.
All right, Mr. Sandy.
And residential homes are allowed within the B4 district, so they won't be out of compliance, so they won't be non-conforming if the change is made.
All right, well, let's, shall we vote on that? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, that motion carries. You got some work to do now.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Weber, please continue.
The next item there, encourage bike share. I just wanted to thank you for your leadership and support of bike share. I believe They're hoping to be up and running again in the next week or two, opening up for spring. And then, Mike, I mean, other than us working with this, are you going to be bringing forward at regular intervals suggestions? How would you like us to move forward with this action plan?
Yeah, this is a little bit unique that it wasn't, it's not a city-funded study. So I think first we'd probably want to give this group time to read through it and take a look at it. Obviously, we have our contact information up on the screen. If there's other meetings or questions that anyone has, we encourage you to reach out, send emails. On the other side of it, I think our hope is that some of this starts happening regardless of your involvement, that there's champions that throughout the community that take this on and come forward with ideas, and then you might be in the position to say, yeah, let's do it or not, but at least that you're informed on what at this initial stage what we're trying to accomplish, and I think too, just thinking about it from this is a vision document for 10 years, so the sooner we start talking about these grand big vision ideas, the easier it's going to be to implement it when the time comes, because we've done our due diligence and we have people that are backing it. There can be conversations to plan for how they can be funded. That limits the burden on the city. So I think this is all just exciting stuff, and it was really fun to be a part of. And again, appreciate your time tonight.
If I may, Ms. Baumbach, we're lucky to be a night community. And thanks for pursuing this study and all the work here. I hope that you will continue to work with the planning department and individual council members and community groups to see that this continues to move forward, and let me know if I can help in any way. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No problem. Any other questions or comments? Ms. Dockler, anything from you? Looks like you're also on the steering committee.
No, I think that pretty much sums it up.
Sounds good. All right. Well, thank you for the presentation. As you said, it's a start. It's something to start picking apart and working through and getting things done. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, 2.2, legislative committee update.
Mr. Phelan.
Mayor Buchanski, and thank you for your leadership this legislative committee cycle, along with our co-chairs, Mr. Weber and Mr. Veen. And we're probably, 2 or 3 weeks away from finish, and really now it's about appropriations for the most part. So I think just to recap, before no spiking the football at this point, but we should be very impressed by what we've done from a city leadership and a city department head perspective to really eliminate a lot of bad policy bills that were going to come through that would have impacted us locally here in Grand Forks. So I want to do a big shout out. Once again, we've done a wonderful job, not only leading on behalf of Grand Forks, but the state of North Dakota in maintaining our local ability to make things happen. So I want to thank Paul on the assessing side. He was quite successful, I'm going to say, on several bills relating to taxation. Thank you, Paul, on behalf of us all. Maureen on finance, in particular with special assessments. We were able to push back on a bill, several voting-related bills too, so that was a really great thing. We've maintained our emergency authority for now. I know there's some other bills out there that would want to restrict what we can do during an emergency. Related to that, planning and zoning, Ryan Brooks and Brandon Basefug, again, maintaining what we can do in the ET and some of the inside things that we do in building inspection and those sorts of things. We're really good. By the one downside, the one ad, we were going to try to do on a policy perspective was neighborhood zone bills, and that went down, and not due to our own influence. And what we've done is that we got interlocked with a issue at the state legislature regarding reducing or eliminating the income tax, and that bill had an income tax portion of it, so it got hog house in a way to kill it. So through no fault of our own, and perhaps next session we can be back on that. I want to thank Tangi Bovet. We're still working through the North Dakota PERS, and we that's our retirement system for a lot of really essential workers that we have in our city. It's really one of the prime things that attract and help us retain employees that do a lot of great things week to week here. So we're continuing to work on that. We've asked for reasonable policy changes that we can accept that may have financial contributions from us. Finally, on the more on the appropriation side, I just want to there's several bills that I think when we come back here in late April, early May, we're really going to be able to move forward with trying to, how do we get projects done? And our number one project was the 42nd Demers Avenue underpass. So we'll have to see how that bonding bill comes out with that. Another bill that relates to infrastructure is the Red River Valley Water Supply Project. That we're probably going to get 40 to 50 million. Grand Forks, our metro, is about 13 to 14% of that project. So we'll have impacts of how we're going to move forward as a partner on that particular project. The other important project as part of infrastructure is the state investment in projects throughout the state of North Dakota. And we do have some, at least one particular project that is going to require a lot of investment on infrastructure. So those are areas that we're going to look at as we hopefully can bring through really significant and game-changing projects as we move forward on this session. They are going to have a low-interest, long-term loan funding program, so we've shared the benefits of that, and you see that in the debt service payments that we make through Fund 2163, so they're looking at continuing that and expanding the dollar amount. So I think that'll help us not only in the Red River Valley Water Supply Project, but other infrastructure projects that we want to do here in Grand Forks. The one thing I think that's going to come back to us is career technical education centers. I think the community of Grand Forks is going to get one, along with many other cities in our community for workforce development. So I think, Mr. Weber, you were at the EDC meeting along with Mayor Bochensky. You guys approved moving forward with being a partner in that study. Obviously, we want to do more than study. It kind of like this university study. We want to get to action on something. And I think we're going to receive substantial amounts of money to move forward with the private sector. I think that's going to be exciting as we move forward. I think finally, we are going to receive some of the federal stimulus money. And I think what we know is that the state legislature is looking at that too. So really what they're trying to do is figure out how they can use some of their federal stimulus monies in lieu of state funds. So I think that's really going to be the game-changing thing at the very end of this. And I think it should give us some thoughts of what we should do with our own local funds. And we've talked about that with Mayor Bochensky regarding some of these quality of life investments. So they're doing something similar. So the CTE, or the Career Technical Education, may not come from the state of North Dakota, the funds, but they may come from the federal stimulus if they can get a yes on those sorts of things. So those are pretty exciting things to do as we move forward. LIFT funds too are a part of that, so that's another partnered project, and certainly the Growth Fund and JDA and the EDC are going through some strategic planning, so I think we're going to have more opportunities to move forward in that vein. So with that, Mayor, I think a lot to come, and members of City Council and the legislature, I think I think we can call it a success. It's not over, but it's been a success on the policy basis, and it's been hopefully a success on the appropriations, and come late April, early May, we'll hopefully be back here looking at specific projects and how we move forward. In the meantime, we hope for a federal infrastructure bill that will come through this summer into the fall, and I think that would be another game-changing thing on top of the federal stimulus, on top of what they're going to look to do with the Legacy Fund to move our community ahead. So with that, Mayor Bochensky, thanks for you and the co-chairs, you, Mr. Weber and Mr. Veen, have done I think it's been a good session, so thank you.
Yeah, with that, I'll kick it over to the co-chairs, Mr. Weber or Mr. Veen, for comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very quickly, Todd, you went through that really fast, so maybe I missed it, but I want to make sure that Chief Nelson, Chief Lorenz, and Ms. Alt, important, central role of city government is public safety, and there's been really important work and some victories there by that team. Also, Mr. Mayor, you were kind of included in the thanks, but you've been providing testimony on different bills, very directly involved. Thanks for your work there.
Yep. And finally, I should say, Mr. Gostad's really been I'm going to call it probably the key city attorney on behalf of the state of North Dakota. So as the rookie on the team, I think he suddenly became senior status among the state city attorneys. So thank you, Dan, not only to Dan, but his entire team. And thanks for the shout out on the public safety folks, because again, we led on the Siren Group. That's a state interoperable radio network. And so we're going to probably receive additional money for public works operators and those sorts of things. And to be frank,
That was nice of us to say we, right, Becky?
Yeah. We always say we. Because we are a team. We are a team, and the great thing is people do things quietly on these committees to make things happen, and all three of those individuals that lead those departments are not only local leaders, but they're statewide leaders.
On more than one occasion, I had people from the North Dakota League of Cities mention you and your team, so thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a great note. When the League of Cities is coming to the Grand Forks City Attorney for advice, I think we're doing something right. So appreciate your and your team's work, Mr. Gostad. Mr. Veen, anything else to add, sir?
No, very briefly, I think a tremendous team. It's, the teams that worked well at each of the sessions over the last few years. Mr. Weber, on behalf of the City Council, did the lion's share of the work, and so I want to recognize him and thank him for the work. And then maybe just very briefly, because like I said, the city staff, the mayor, everybody did an amazing job, I thought. I was able to have a short conversation with a couple of our legislators, including Ray Holmberg, and thank them also for the work they did in representing us, which I thought was pretty significant, and thank them much for the work they did.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? All right, thank you. Moving on, 2.3.
All right, COVID-19 update.
Mr. Dulitz, I got just a couple comments, and I'll let you get going as usual. I did get vaccinated. Was it a week ago, almost 2 weeks now on Wednesday. Very little side effects, and I'll be going back in here in 2 weeks, so that's great. Opened up to general public now, which is great, and the Johnson & Johnson is going to be available here in the future, and it's available now, so if you guys want to call the COVID hotline or on my chart, you have some option on which vaccine you're going to take, but largely the clinics will still be pumping out a lot of Moderna and a lot of Pfizer as well. So hopefully, I'm hoping to see that chart still as this is June 1st with herd immunity, but I'll sit on pins and needles till I see that. Mr. Dulitz, please.
Mayor Bochensky, members of the council, I'm Michael Dulitz with Grand Forks Public Health, here to provide another data update related to COVID. Looking at our health officer's dashboard, just as a point-in-time look, we have seen an increase since the last time I was here in the number of COVID cases in Grand Forks County. We're running right around 22.8 per 100,000, which puts us roughly where we were at, again, last roughly July. I don't foresee in the very immediate short term that we would end up going into red on this measure based off of the case activity over the past couple of days. But that is something that will probably stay in that 20 to 25-ish range, at least in the short term. Taking a look at what we've been seeing with the increase in Grand Forks County as well as our peer counties in the state of North Dakota, Grand Forks County has seen a significant increase in the number of new COVID-19 cases, but we have been very much overshadowed by the increases that have been seen in Cass County. Burley, Morton, and Ward have seen smaller impacts in the increases in cases that they have seen, but the increase in Cass County has really driven up the state average in the number of cases. We've not seen corresponding increases in cases in any of the rural areas in North Dakota or really in Polk County either. So when we look at where the spread is happening right now, it does seem to be particularly focused between that 20 and 60 age group. I have felt very confident by the number of, or the low number of cases in the older age groups. We haven't seen a significant increase in hospitalizations either. I'm a tiny bit concerned when I look at the 10 to 19 age group, and I do see increases in there. But that is a smaller population than any of the adult populations. So it's a little bit more sensitive to case increases. So when we look at our average hospitalizations, this is for Grand Forks County. Again, we are continuing to see a very low hospitalization or burden in the community when we look at both hospitalizations of Grand Forks County residents as well as hospitalizations in general as a tertiary care hospital. We have seen Burley Morton see a little bit of an increase as well as Cass County at the same time. When I was looking through this increase in cases, I was trying to figure out what was driving it. I saw a small increase in the Minnesota statewide numbers. So we looked at the rural counties in our general area. We looked at the rural counties in North Dakota because we were wondering if maybe it was a Red River Valley thing. But really what ended up kind of fitting the mold was when we looked at the metropolitan statistical areas. So this is the Grand Forks MSA. So this is Grand Forks County and Polk County combined with the number of daily new cases per 100,000 population.
And then when we look at other metropolitan statistical areas in the general region, Minnesota, South Dakota, North Dakota, they have all been seeing a pretty similar increase in the number of cases, with one exception, and that's the Rochester metropolitan statistical area. They are the ones with the highest vaccination rate that we've seen in our area, and so that may have something to do with the relatively low case burden, and so that does give us hope that with the significant amount of work that's going into vaccination, that we could see decreases in our case counts. Looking at our vaccination efforts locally, again, we have made a lot of progress since the last time that I have come here. We do have about 16,000 people in Grand Forks County who have been fully vaccinated, and that is about 24% of the population. And when we look at the number of people that we've given first and second doses to, we're over halfway to our 60% goal. So we want to get at least 60% for a good feeling of herd immunity for Grand Forks County, so we are over that halfway point. The best way for me to illustrate that is to use a nice figure. So the last time I was at City Council was on March 15th. I took a look at what the data would look like on this graph for then. The people in green on this graph are people who are fully vaccinated, so have received at least 2 doses of vaccine or 1 dose of Johnson & Johnson. The people in yellow are partially vaccinated. The people in red on this are people that we need to get vaccinated to reach 60%. The people in black are the people that are vaccine eligible, but we don't need to get vaccinated to reach 60%. And then the gray is people who are not eligible for vaccine, as in they are under the age of 16. So the big takeaway on this is we need everybody in red to turn to green for us to reach herd immunity. So looking a little less than a month ago, we weren't quite done with a full line on here. A full line is about 11,500 people. Now when we look at where we're at for today, we've made a lot of progress. So we went from, we're now almost to 1.5 lines, so again, that 16,000 people, plus we have a fair number who have received partial doses, including the mayor. So we have made a lot of progress, and this is very heartening right now. I know the person who helps me with the data, Narish, she enjoys being able to highlight these into green every day, so I hope this is a useful tool for you. Another thing that I did notice when I looked at our vaccine performance is we are doing very well in our vaccination rates in the 65 plus population. So when we look at the 1-dose vaccination rate in that population, we are at about 84%. If we wanted to kind of look at what it would take for herd immunity in each of the vaccine eligible age groups, we need about 74, so we beat that by about 10%. So that is a very good indicator for us. This is similar to what we're seeing in small communities that really have less than 1,000 people in this age group. They're the ones that are up here, and we're joining them compared to our peer communities. So looking at our bottom line, again, we are seeing a lot of progress in that 65 plus age group. When we're at vaccine events, we are still seeing people in the 65 plus age group still coming in for vaccine. So they are still making their way through. Some people may have wanted to, see how things went first for other people, may have changed their mind, things like that. But we are still seeing good vaccine progress, and we're seeing a lot of progress in getting people vaccinated, both in Grand Forks County as well as in Polk County. So that covers our metropolitan statistical area. We're still seeing those low hospitalizations. We haven't seen a COVID-related death in Grand Forks County in some time. Again, another positive sign. That said, the increase in cases does concern us a little bit, just in that we haven't quite reached that herd immunity point yet. So those cases could potentially lead to outbreaks, particularly if there's a lot of potentially unvaccinated pockets of people. That said, we do have lots of opportunities now for people to get vaccinated. So if you are eligible to get vaccinated, now is the time to get vaccinated. Anybody 16 and above, there are wonderful opportunities through our community vaccination events at the Alaris Center on Wednesdays and Saturdays. So we would be happy to have you there. And then I did hear, listening to national news, that it is looking like we are going to be moving into the 12 to 15 age group with the Pfizer vaccine, potentially by the end of this school year, actually, so within, a month or two, or potentially into early summer. So, the data is looking promising for that expansion. My final threats, we still are seeing COVID variant activity in the state. The state is doing random and indicated sampling being people that have like travel-related spread and things like that. Of the COVID-19 specimens, we aren't getting a ton of data though to put out related to that. They're just telling us that the activity is there in the community, and it is in kind of every region of the state. With that, I am open to any questions. Otherwise, I do have additional slides attached of measures I've talked about previously.
Thank you, Mr. Dulitz. I think those numbers are looking great. Thank you to Debbie, yourself, Haley, the whole team out there. And those numbers are going to get even better because I think Wednesday's got a record. Is that correct? A record number coming Wednesday?
Last Wednesday we did 2,200. I don't have the numbers for this week off the top of my head.
All right, I think Debbie's nodding back there. I think we're at about 2,400, something like that. But any questions for Mr. Dulitz or Mr. Phelan? Do you have something?
Mayor, I was just going to, also, I think next week we will be in high schools to provide vaccines too. So that'll be an additional, when you look at that age 16 group, we're going to be doing some further outreach to capture more of that age group too, I believe.
Great. Any other questions? When they ask no questions, that means things are going better than before. Yes. So that's great. Thank you, Mr. Dulitz.
2.4, we have 3 proclamations. National Library Week, April 4th through 10th. National Public Safety Telecommunications Week, April 11th through 17th. And the Fair Housing Month, April 2021.
I will add, this is also a good segue, National Public Health Week, but it's kind of turned into National Public Health Year Plus, so just wanted to point that out and be thankful for all the work that they do. I'm going to just cruise over these real quickly, because since we've got 4 of them, I'll save everyone of reading through them all. First one is National Library Week. So that proclamation reads as follows: whereas libraries of all types are at the heart of their cities, towns, schools, and campuses serving their communities, whereas libraries have long served as trusted and treasured institutions for all members of the community, whereas libraries, librarians, and library workers are joining library supporters and advocates across the nation to celebrate National Library Week. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Brandon Bochinsky, proclaim National Library Week, April 4th to the 10th, 2021. During this week, I encourage all residents to visit their library in person or online to access resources and services. And we've had a lot of great comments to the library, so I want to thank the library staff for all the work they did to get open, and it looks great in there, and thank you to you too, Ms. Dockler. Next one is, let's go with the Public Safety, National Public Safety Telecommunications Week, April 11th to the 17th, 2021. So whereas emergencies can occur at any time that require police, fire, or emergency medical services, and whereas public safety telecommunicators of Grand Forks Public Safety Answering Point have contributed substantially to the apprehension of criminals, suppression of fires, and treatment of patients, and whereas each dispatcher has exhibited compassion, understanding, and professionalism during the performance of their job in this past year. Therefore, be it resolved that the City of Grand Forks, North Dakota, declares the week of April 11th through April 17th, 2021 to be National Public Safety Telecommunications Week in Grand Forks in honor of the men and women whose diligence and professionalism keep our city and citizens and responders safe. And the last one is Fair Housing Month, April 2021. Whereas one of the greatest freedoms enjoyed by Americans is the freedom to live in a home of one's choice, whereas each resident of the City of Grand Forks is urged to support efforts to put into practice the principles of freedom, justice, and equality upon which this great nation was founded during their nationwide observance of Fair Housing Month. Now, therefore, I, Brandon Bochinsky, Mayor of Grand Forks, North Dakota do hereby proclaim April 2021 Fair Housing Month in our city and urge all citizens to honor and abide by the letter and the spirit of the fair housing law. Thank you. All right, we, 3 public hearings and second reading of ordinances. Oh, it looks like we have none, so we'll move on to 4 action items. I believe the only one we had was from last week. We had to change the bid on 410. So Mr. Lieberman, is there any other ones anybody else wanted to pull? All right, let's go through then real quick, and then we'll call on you, Mr. Lieberman. So we'll, on the consent agenda, 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, 4.5, 4.6, 4.7, 4.8, 4.9, 4.11, and 4.12. Can I get a motion, please?
Move approval.
For approval from, let's take Mr. Veen's motion and a second from Mr. Weber. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Those motions, those items carry, that motion carries. Thank you.
And then 4.10, award bid for project number 8059 Columbia Road reconstruction.
Thank you, Mayor Boczynski, and good evening, City Council members. This item, this is our project to reconstruct a portion of North Columbia Road from the overpass to just north of University Avenue. At last week's special council meeting, it was tabled pending the DOT's review of the low bids. Just an update, DOT did review the apparent low bidder, and that bid was rejected. It did not meet the requirements of the disadvantaged business enterprise. There's a goal of 6%, and the apparent low bidder was closer to 1.5%, and that was an immediate disqualifier. So they reviewed this week the next lowest bidder, and they confirmed that that bid provided by KPH does in fact meet the requirements of the contract, and they are recommending that for award. That amount is roughly $5.4 million. Of note, that is about $500,000 more than the previous low bidder, but I want to put that in context of the budget and the federal cost share that we are able to take advantage of with this. So this project will be funded through 2 different funds, at least the local portion. There is replacement of a sanitary force main, where the city has budgeted $1.1 million from Fund 5200, the wastewater fund. The local share for that is about $635,000, so well under the budgeted amount. The other local expenses for the pavements, traffic signals, refurbishment of the pedestrian underpass, the local share for that is roughly $1.2 million in 2021 expenses. We have $2 million budgeted for that in Fund 4815, so we are well underneath what the city has budgeted for this project. And when we keep it in light that we are able to take advantage of over $4.1 million of federal funding, this is a great opportunity for us to construct some much-needed improvements in this corridor. So engineering is recommending that the City Council approve the award of the contract to KPH in the amount of $5,395,449.58. Pending any questions?
Move approval. I got a motion to approve. We have a second? I'll second. We got a second from Mr. Sandy. Any questions, comments, sir?
Comment. I had a really good conversation with Mr. Grasser about this project after last Monday. Although Mr. Wagle and I had moved approval pending review, I have a lot of concern about a project like this that's utilizing federal dollars, knowing the discussions we've had related to federal dollars being used on city projects because of the additional cost related to the Davis-Bacon requirements that the federal government puts on projects. Not that I don't want to move this forward, because I second it. My concern was when we wrap so many different aspects of a project together, such as moving the force main, because the force main isn't part of the money that's going to do this project, right? But we wrapped it in the project where we didn't have to, yet we're paying more for that part of the construction. Mr. Grasser assured me that they spent a lot of time moving the pieces on the board, trying to make sure that we were getting the best value out of the dollars that we were taking from the feds, and weighed that into consideration when we put this package together. And I believe that he, based upon what he told me, he was correct. And so just for future reference, I had discussed Mr. Grasser if he could help us understand when they're doing that on these federal projects. It would make me feel more at ease. Not that I have all faith in Mr. Lieberman and our engineering team. It's just, these are the questions that he's told us we should be asking, so that now that it came up, I was asking the question. So I certainly think that our engineering staff did a very good job on this project, and even though we're paying a little bit more with the new bid, and it's 22% over the engineer's estimate. Right now, we're seeing all across the country the cost of materials are skyrocketing. I think we're in good shape with the federal dollars we're getting to move this as quickly as we can. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Sandy. Any other comments? All right, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion carries, and the bid is awarded to KPH Inc. Thank you, Mr. Lieberman. 5, information items.
5.1, statement of changes in cash balance as of January 31st.
Thank you.
And 5.2 is investment portfolio as of February 28th.
Thank you. 6, citizen comments. Do we have any comments submitted online?
I have none from finance.
All right, I don't recognize anybody here, but we'll open up to citizen comments. Citizen comments closed. Moving on, 7, approval of minutes and bills.
7.1 is your vendor list and engineer's estimate as presented.
We have a motion by Mr. Weigel to approve. Is that a motion to approve, Mr. Weigel? Yes. We have a second. Second from Ms. Mock. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Signed. That vendor list and engineer's estimate is approved. 7.2.
In your minutes from December 7th and 21st.
As is, Mayor.
Got a motion from Mr. Sandy. We have a second from Ms. Mock. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Same sign. Minutes are approved. 8, city administrator comments. Mr. Phelan.
Thank you, Mayor Buczynski. From last week's work session, we have integrated, and I did send out an email that we will incorporate that. Much of that will be within the budget, as well as the EDC is doing some strategic planning. So we'll link that in. So when we come back here in June and July, we'll integrate a lot of those discussion items. I know the first item was committee appointments. I presume that you'll follow up with us on any assistance you need to help set that up. Finally, I'd like to give a huge shout out to Paul Hodak. And when you think we have nearly 19,000 properties in the city of Grand Forks between residential and commercial, and you have 3 protests, I think that's a job well done. I don't know the percentage of that, but that's remarkable. I think the other thing, if you've been here since 2014, Paul and his team, and I'm going to point out Paul specifically, really has rejuvenated the assessing department with the new system that he spoke of today. So why did he point out the system? Because it's taken a lot of hard work. Not only did they have to do their job day to day, they also added that on, and nobody asked Paul to do it. He just decided he needed to do that to move the department forward. So the other thing is Paul's the guy here at 7, and he's here until the job needs to get done, whether it's during the week or on the weekends. So, and finally, he's probably one of the most beloved colleagues that we have among the department head group. He does his job. He does it quietly, and shows up here a couple times a year. And the fact that you don't see your city assessor very much, and the fact that you don't see a city assessor with a room full of angry people means he's doing a remarkable job. So some of the best department heads you don't see very much, and you don't hear about them day to day. So that's Paul Hodak. I think finally, Paul's been at this a long time. He's a perfectionist. So even if he gets 3 out of nearly 19,000, it really does eat him up. He's told me, he's confided to me that, the job's not quite as fun as it used to be. And it's because of his perfectionism and what he does. And so on nights like this, I'm sure there's some relief in him, but it's a grind for him. It's a grind for his entire department. And so I want to give a huge thank you to Paul and his team tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Phelan. Your comments were well worth it as we got to see Mr. Hodak blush tonight, so that was great. And thank you, Mr. Hodak. All right, moving on to 9, Mayor and Council member comments. Mr. Weigel, we'll start with you.
No, thank you, Mayor.
Ms. Dockler?
No, thank you.
Mr. Weber?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Kavami?
Just a quick one. Tonight, just received a citizen comment regarding our reevaluation of the alcohol permits and codes and requirements. And I just wanted to see if there was a status update on, I think we're going to form a committee, correct? And that committee is going to revisit city code, including our alcohol license. So we are moving forward with that and just seeing if there's any update on that.
Good question. I don't recall if we had lumped the alcohol in on that. I think I'm not saying we shouldn't. I thought, I haven't asked the mayor his opinion, or Mr. Phelan, or Mr. Gosted, so why don't we see where they are, because I know that they had some thoughts on that. And if we don't wrap it into that, I'm sure they will bring it back to council.
Yeah, I think any guidance you can give myself, Mr. Phelan, or staff would be helpful.
Great.
All right, Mr. Veen?
Nothing more.
All right, Council Vice President Mock? All right, President Sandy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did mention construction costs locally earlier. I am curious how we're doing on building permits. Don't need to know now. I am concerned. I'm hearing anecdotally that the cost for wiring, for house wiring, has tripled in the last few months. Certainly, a sheet of plywood is $40 these days. Sheetrock is crazy. Certainly, all kinds of framing materials have become very expensive. I'm hoping people are still building, so I would, if we could find out from inspections what kind of, how we're trending compared to previous years, I think that would be good if you could send it out in an email or something. Otherwise, Mayor, did you have a birthday this last weekend?
Yesterday, yep.
Happy birthday.
39 years young, so
Way to
thank
go.
you for that.
Happy birthday.
Jeez, I thought I was going to sneak by, but I got busted. All right. Well, thank you. I can also attest to the cost as my, I guess, used to be my day job was building houses, and it seems like so far there's been a little bit of a rush because there's no end in sight of those prices going up, or going down. But I do believe that we are still ahead of schedule in the last 5 years, at least where we're at, but we'll definitely get that out. I hope everyone had a great Easter. I was outside. I got some vitamin D, so that's good. We've all been missing out on that being inside over the winter, so I hope everyone else was able to enjoy their weekend. And that's all I got for today. So let's look for a motion to adjourn. Mr. Weber motions. We got a second from Mr. Sandy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. May 3rd to the 7th. So if you're on a Monday trash day,